Clara sat in the doctor's waiting room, her hands trembling as she clutched her purse in her lap. The silence was only broken by the occasional sound of the clock on the wall, seemingly mocking her anxiety. Finally, the door opened and the doctor called her in. With her heart pounding, Clara entered the room. The doctor, with a serious expression, wasted no time getting straight to the point. "Clara, the test results are in, and I have some tough news for you. You've been diagnosed with a serious and rare illness." Clara's world crumbled. It was as if the ground had disappeared from beneath her feet. She felt a wave of fear and despair wash over her body. Trying to keep her composure, she asked, her voice trembling, and now? What are my options?" The doctor explained the treatment, the challenges, and the slim chances of recovery. Clara listened in a state of shock, trying to process the magnitude of what she had just heard. With a muttered thank you, she left the office, each step heavier than the last. Arriving home, she found Tom, her partner, sitting on the couch, watching TV. "Tom, we need to talk," she said, trying to hold back tears. He looked at her with a bored expression. "What now, Clara?" Clara took a deep breath and told him about the diagnosis. She hoped for a hug, words of comfort, anything to show that he cared. Instead, Tom just looked at her coldly. "That's terrible, Clara, but you know I'm not good with this stuff. It'll be okay." Tom's response was like a punch to the gut. Clara felt alone and helpless, the emotional distance between them growing by the second. While she tried to deal with the reality of her condition, Tom began to withdraw, leaving home more often and spending more time at work. Clara's lonely nights became routine, and she began to wonder if the man she loved really cared about her. Loneliness and fear became her constant companions, but Clara knew she had to be strong. She would fight for her life, even if she had to do it alone. In the quiet kitchen of the house, the soft light of dawn seeped through the curtains as the housekeeper, Mariana, moved with almost surgical precision. She retrieved ingredients from the cupboard, her expression focused and determined. Among the items, a small unlabeled jar that she skillfully concealed among spices and flour. Mariana discreetly opened the jar and sprinkled a fine powder into Clara's soup pot. She stirred the contents slowly, ensuring the powder dissolved without a trace. Her face was impassive, but her eyes gleamed with a mixture of anxiety and resolve. Tom entered the kitchen, caught off guard by her presence. "Mariana, here so early?" She nodded, quickly closing the jar and hiding it in the palm of her hand. "Yes, Mr. Tom. I want to make sure Mrs. Clara has everything she needs. I'll prepare some meals to freeze." Tom observed, his expression unreadable. "That's very thoughtful of you. Clara really likes your soup." "I'm glad to hear that," Mariana replied, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's important that she eats well." Tom nodded, seemingly satisfied with the response, and turned to leave the kitchen. "I'll check some emails. Let me know if you need anything." As soon as he left, Mariana continued her work with cold efficiency. She knew the risk she was taking, but the possibility of having Tom all to herself, free from Clara's grasp, fueled her determination. Later, as she served the soup to Clara, Mariana watched every move with disguised intensity. "I hope you enjoy it, Mrs. Clara. I made it with a lot of care." Clara thanked her with a weak smile, completely unaware of the danger now consuming her, a shadow of distrust never crossing her tired face. Mariana discreetly withdrew, leaving Clara behind, an innocent victim in her home turned battlefield. Clara sat on the back porch, wrapped in a blanket against the afternoon chill, but it wasn't the weather that bothered her. Her eyes were distant, reflective, already suspecting the weight of the words that would soon be spoken. Tom had been acting strange, distant, and although she knew deep down, she chose to ignore it, clinging to the illusion of normalcy. Tom stood before her, a man tormented by his own shadow. "Clara, I need to talk to you," he began, his voice broken with guilt. She stared at him, a feeble attempt to mask her anxiety. "I already know, Tom. You've been distant. I chose not to see, but—" He interrupted, taking a breath, the next words harder than the others. "It's not just that, Clara. There's more. I'm leaving home." The confession hung in the air, heavy and venomous. Clara felt a lump form in her throat, her heart tight, but nothing prepared her for what came next. "Mariana, the housekeeper, is pregnant. The child is mine." Clara's world collapsed there, each word from Tom like a blow. She felt betrayed, humiliated, not only by her love choosing another path, but by doing so at a time when she was fighting for her own life. "How could you?" Clara's voice was a sharp whisper, each syllable trembling with a mixture of pain and disbelief. "How could you do this to me now?" Tom faltered, the conflict clear on his face. "I didn't plan for this to happen. It was a mistake. But I can't ignore the responsibility. It's my child, Clara." Clara recoiled into herself, the blanket no longer offering any comfort. "I'm here, fighting for my life, and you—" She couldn't finish the sentence, shock and pain suffocating her. "I'm sorry, Clara, I really am," Tom said, though the words sounded hollow even to him. "I need to do this. For Mariana. For the baby." Clara stood up abruptly, her hands trembling. "Then go. Do what you need to do." Her voice was firm, but her eyes, welled with tears, told a different story. Tom hesitated, wanting to say something more, anything that could bridge the chasm between them, but there were no words for such a feat. With a sad nod, he turned and left Clara alone, his figure disappearing into the shadow of the falling afternoon. Sitting back down, tears streamed freely down Clara's face. The silence of the house echoed the emptiness left by Tom, a cruel reminder of her new reality. In this moment of profound loneliness, she realized that the fight for her health would now be only a part of her battle. Months had passed since Tom had abandoned Clara, without a single phone call. He had simply left town with Mariana, leaving behind an entire life. Now, suddenly, he showed up at Clara's house, expecting to find her nearly dead, but he was surprised to see her radiant, revitalized, and accompanied by Daniel, a sturdy man who introduced himself as a sheriff and Clara's new partner. "Tom, what a surprise to see you here," said Clara, with a serenity that concealed well the turmoil of emotions. She stood, healthier than he could imagine. Tom swallowed hard, confusion evident on his face. "Clara, I thought that I wouldn't be here anymore," Clara finished for him with a slight smile. "Looks like you were wrong." Tom looked to Daniel, seeking some explanation for Clara's remarkable recovery. Daniel, noticing Tom's curiosity, decided to intervene. "I'm Daniel, and besides being Clara's friend, I'm a sheriff here in our town. Since we met, we started investigating certain irregularities that arose during the time of your illness." Tom felt a chill down his spine. "Irregularities?" "Yes," continued Daniel with a serious tone. "Clara mentioned how her health began to improve drastically after certain people left her life. This led us to conduct some additional tests, and we discovered traces of toxic substances in the leftovers of food you left behind." Tom's expression turned to shock. "Are you accusing me of something, Daniel?" "We're not accusing anyone without concrete evidence," intervened Clara, placing her hand on Daniel's arm. "But the evidence began to point to poisoning attempts, and everything indicates that someone very close to me was involved." Tom felt the weight of Clara's words. The implications were clear, and the fear of being held responsible for something so heinous began to take hold of him. "Clara, I swear I didn't know anything about this." "We'll find out the truth, Tom," said Daniel, with a firmness that brooked no argument. "The investigation is still ongoing. For now, it's best that you cooperate and give us any information that may help clarify this case." Tom, stunned by the turn of events, merely nodded, unable to formulate a response. He looked to Clara, seeking some trace of the love they once shared, but all he found was the determination of a woman who had faced death and emerged stronger than ever. As Tom left the house, the weight of his choices and the uncertainty of the future weighed heavily on his shoulders. Clara and Daniel, on the other hand, shared a look of complicity, ready to face whatever came next, together. At the local police station, Tom sat face to face with Daniel in a stark interrogation room. The atmosphere was tense, with the gravity of the situation weighing heavily in the air. Clara watched through the one-way glass, her expression a mixture of anxiety and determination. Daniel flipped through the final report from the forensic technicians as he began the interrogation. "Tom, we found consistent traces of poison in several samples of food that were prepared exclusively for Clara. And furthermore, we discovered that these substances were purchased with a credit card in your name." Tom swallowed hard, his facade beginning to crumble. I never bought that. I swear, Daniel. You have to believe me." Daniel kept his gaze steady. "Tom, we need you to think carefully. Mariana had access to your credit card, didn't she?" The question hit Tom like a punch to the gut. "Yes," he murmured. "She used it sometimes to buy things for the house." "So is it possible that she bought the poison without your knowledge?" Daniel pressed, watching Tom's reaction. The truth began to unravel, clear and cruel. Tom covered his face with his hands, the implications of his actions and inactions beginning to sink in. "My God, what have I done?" Clara, watching, felt a mixture of relief and devastation. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the possibility that Tom could have been manipulated by Mariana, putting her in mortal danger. Daniel continued, "We'll need to interrogate Mariana as well. If she's guilty, she'll be held accountable. And Tom, depending on what else we find out, you might also face serious legal consequences." Hours passed as Mariana was brought into the police station. Under intense pressure, she eventually confessed to poisoning Clara's food, driven by jealousy and the desire to have Tom all to herself. Tom watched, horrified, as his entire life collapsed because of poorly calculated choices and misplaced trust. At the end of the day, Clara and Daniel met outside the police station. Clara looked at him, a profound sadness in her eyes. "Thank you, Daniel, for everything." Daniel squeezed her hand, offering comfort. "We did what was right, Clara. Now it's time to rebuild your life, away from all this poison." Clara nodded, knowing that the road ahead would be difficult, but at least for the first time in a long time, she felt safe and free to move forward with justice finally